All right, we are ready. Last time we were working on Klipper. There was one part where, well, we didn't finish for one thing. We ran out of time. But there was one part that was never going to work. So let's pick up from there and get Klipper installed on our printer and see what it does and what other things we might want to do with it. I've got a couple of ideas over here. So last time, let's see, well, this is where we were starting on Klipper, but we were over here in the, following the instructions, of installing Klipper. And we were in the make menu config. Maybe we can start that back up. So we had gotten to putty. I might have to get a different screen on. There we go. We had logged into our Raspberry Pi. So the part where we installed the RPi imager, and we didn't install that. We used RPi imager to install. We did main cell. We did the main cell version of Klipper. We did all that. All that's fine. And then we had it up and running as far as you could boot up the Pi and it would connect to our network. I was running a mobile hotspot just to have a easy way to get to our thing, which I need to turn back on so we can log into Klipper again, or log into the Raspberry Pi. So I'll wait for it to connect before I try to connect with Putty. Let's see. I just rebooted my mobile hotspot. There's probably a way to make them never turn off, but mine, oh yeah, power saving. So whenever there's no devices connected to it, it will turn off. So hopefully it'll reconnect here shortly. I may have to reboot the Pi, but it does take I don't know, maybe a minute for it to recognize that it's the hotspot is up. Although it hasn't recognized yet. So I might reboot the Pi just to re-trigger it connecting to our hotspot. Give it 10 seconds. Okay, so nothing connected yet, so I'm going to reboot the Pi and hopefully it'll connect then. It'll take a minute for it to reboot. But I do have that switch. Remember, with the Cana kit, I have the little switch that interrupts the power to the USB of the Pi. Otherwise, to turn it off, you have to unplug something. And so I do like that little switch, being able to just click the switch and it turns it off, click it, and it turns it back on. So the Pi is rebooting now. It's going through all its process. And it'll take a second for it to go find the hotspot and connect to it. Hopefully it will do that. Well, while it's doing that thing, let's go back over here and see where I went wrong. So we were fine up to here. So the make menu config, what it does is it goes in and it configures a file that we're going to put onto the printer, because the printer board needs to actually know that it's going to connect to Klipper. Otherwise, it's just going to operate the way it always has operated before, which is not what we wanted. I'm still not seeing it connect here. I may have to look here. Let me check one thing. What is the name? Oh, yeah, it's that one. Hold on. I did make one change here, so as a test, and I think it may have interrupted the network connection. Hopefully it's about to reconnect here. I'll show you what I did in a second. Yeah, it connected now. Okay. All right. So we were on this make menu config thing, and so in Putty, I got too many windows open. Here we are. Let's get our IP address. It's not the same as it was before, so let's get the new one. So you should see when you get to this point, you should see your IP address as some 192 number. That just means it's on your local network, and then the other numbers are going to be totally different for you, particularly the last number. So let's connect to that. Okay, so there's a little warning that it hasn't connected to that, although it just hasn't connected to it on that IP address. So we're going to tell it it's fine. Default, unless you change them, which I have not changed them yet because we're still doing all our default stuff. So for a Raspberry Pi, the default username is Pi and password is Raspberry, all lowercase. All right, so we were here, and then we were in our make. Oh well, let's go get our. So change the directory CD to Klipper so that we're in the right directory, and then we're going to make our menu config, and we were over here. Now here's where we made a mistake for this printer. We did the right instructions and everything, it's just not for this printer. So how you know what to put into here, all these options, you go over to the klipper3d.org is the site I'm at right now, and let's see, we want to do a configuration reference here, and let's see, is that the one? No, maybe installation. I gotta find the right, there we go. All right, so let me click on the right one. So we were under installation and then config directory. So it's actually a hyperlink in the installation instructions. And that takes us over to all of these pre-done printer configurations, or well, printer configurations that have the settings that we need for the make menu. So I chose this one, Ender 3, which is what I have, 2018. The problem with that is, and I noticed it when I was installing that I didn't think this was right, but I went with it anyway, and turned out it wasn't right. So the problem with this is that this is the older 8-bit board. So my printer is running older hardware, but not that old of a hardware. So this printer configuration file is for an even older version of the Ender 3. Now the problem is that there is no Ender 3 kind of modern one. There are Ender 3 S1, S1 Plus, V2, all these kind of things. I went with the Ender 3 S1 because that's the oldest of the ones that are not the 2018 version. So what you need here is each one of the boards that are in the printer, the control boards that are in the printer. Those are different iterations. Mine, we looked at it earlier when we were putting the CR Touch in. We opened up the control box and we looked at the board number, and it was a 4.2.2 board. And so that board has to match up with whatever make menu configuration file we're going to generate here. And I had matched it up with one that was older than a 4.2, like a 1 point whatever, I don't remember the number, but an 8-bit board versus a 32-bit board. So now here I am over in the Ender 3, but S1, which is not quite what I have, but the board is the same. And I use all of these settings. And so you look at this header file and work through it, changing your settings in make menu to match what the header is. So this is what I needed in order for this to work. So then we can quit. Yes. Oh, wait, well, all right, so I didn't make any changes, so it didn't make me say yes. And then we can go back to our, well, save your printer configuration file. We'll need that. Let's see, let's go back. Then we can go into make. So this command make, and it will make, I don't want to do it because I've already done it, and it takes a little bit of time. Not terribly long, but a little bit of time. But we go into make, and it will create the file that we need. Now, what I didn't do is last time we tried this process of flashing directly, and it wouldn't flash anyway because we were trying to flash the old 8-bit version to our 32-bit board, so that wasn't going to work. But I actually couldn't get that to work with the 4.2.2 board either. So instead what I did is when you create the file, use the run the make command here, run this make command, it will create a firmware.bin file. So what I did, in fact we can show that part, is I got out of Putty. So where's Putty? This one. Closed Putty. I guess you could leave it open, but I closed it. Yes, I want to close it. Then I went to WinSCP. So let me see if I can get you to that web page so you can see what it... there it is right there, winscp.net. And this, you can download this, and it will give you a program that looks a lot like Putty. You know, it's going to pop up here and like you've got to connect to something. Now this is the wrong address, so we're going to connect to a new one. Let's see, new site. Put in that web address. Now this is another reason I'm using the mobile hotspot, because it's easier for me to see the local address, IP address, versus having to dig through however many devices I have connected. So that's another reason I'm using the mobile hotspot. I've already forgotten it though. 192.168. Plus, you have to be careful with your public addresses. Like if I was not using a local address, if I was using like a broadcast address that other people could log into, I would not want to give that IP address out, because then other people could log into it. And that's a thing, that's a little bit of a concern with 3D printers. If you have them set up in a way to where they're not secure, maybe you want to leave your printer in one place and then you want to go to another place and remotely log into it. In order to do that, you might need some kind of public facing IP address, and if you don't have the right security in place, then anyone could go in, particularly if you haven't changed any of the passwords, it's using the default password, and control your printer. And you probably don't want that, because you know they might do nothing, but they could do malicious things like try to make it heat too much, or try to make it print something you didn't want to print, use up your filament, whatever. So this one is, you have to be on this network to log into it, so that's different. I'm not as concerned about somebody breaking into that. Username is still the same though. We will log in, and what this will what this will do is, now I am in on the right hand side of WinSCP. I'm in the Raspberry Pi like file system. So the SD card that we put on there, I'm in that file system. And what you want to do is take that Klipper firmware.bin. So I think it shows up in the Klipper out folder. There it is, Klipper.bin. Take it off of there. So like this is a regular Windows type file system where you can like drag it over to your desktop or to some folder or whatever. Put that on the SD card, and it works just like when we did compile. We used VS Code and we compiled some new firmware for adding the CR Touch. Put that Klipper.bin on a SD card, put it into the printer and boot the printer up. This time, instead of getting a screen, let's see, getting a a new screen over here, it just stays blue, because now the printer is really being controlled by Klipper. So let it boot up. You'll not get anything. In fact, this screen is still blue, and that's actually a good sign in this case for what we're doing. Then you can go back over to let's see, go back over here, and let's go up a couple of levels to, oh, I have to double click, sorry. There we go. Go back to the home Pi directory. Again, this is on the Raspberry Pi. that's running Klipper now. Go into printer data and config, and you're going to put that printer.cfg file. So that's the file over here. We were in printer configuration file. We're going to find the one that we want. So I use the Creality. Where is it at? Printer Creality Ender 3 S1. You're going to actually save this file, so you can download it, or you can cut and paste it into Notepad. You want to use if you're cutting and pasting it into a Notepad to like edit it, then you want to use something like Notepad. I actually use Notepad++. You want to do that because if you put it in Word and save it, there's a good chance that you'll accidentally get some header information in there. So you'll get other stuff instead of just this file. You'll get other stuff related to the program, so the date it was made and what version of the program and the author and all that, and that could create problems. Hopefully it would just be ignored, but it could create problems. So you save it from Notepad and save it as printer.cfg. You use your config, or well, not your config, you use your WinSCP or something like that. That's just a program that I use. Somewhere I probably have it. Yeah, there it is. So there it is. I saved it from Notepad onto my PC desktop, and then you go into this home pi printer data config folder, and you just drop it in there. So you drop that into here. Now when you run Klipper, so running Klipper means turning on the Pi, it will have some idea of the type of printer. Now this I'm going to close out WinSCP. We don't need it anymore. Yes. This file is still generic. It doesn't, for instance, know that there's a CR Touch attached. It doesn't know any particulars about my printer. It just knows, hey, this is a generic thing that looks like an Ender 3 S1. And that's what it knows. So now what I can do is I can actually go into Klipper, and we can start doing things with our printer. I am going to show you, I've got a folder open here. I'm going to show you this because, let me move so you can see the whole web address. See, there we go. Alright, so this is a GitHub page. This piece of software might be another way that you want to go. I'm actually going to end up using this. But this is not a replacement for Klipper. This is kind of like a file manager type of, like, it keeps everything up to date. And so if you want to use it, I have no idea how you pronounce it, Kial, I don't know. But this is the GitHub directory for this particular file. Now you don't actually have to download any of it. You can, but if you scroll down, we've already done the Raspberry Pi imager process, so you don't have to do any of that. You just do this. So you should, as a result of having done the Pi imager and installing MainCell, you shouldn't need this line, but it doesn't hurt. What this does is it makes sure that you have the current version installed of Git, so that your Pi can go and grab the files it needs to run this piece of software. In fact, I'll show you what this software does in a second. So you would just copy this. Let's go ahead and get Putty open. It won't hurt me to run these commands. If I can get Putty to open. There we go. Let's log back. Oh, not 139, 192.1. And we're currently on that one. So here we are in Putty again. Got to log in like we have been doing. Okay. So what you would do is you could just copy this, right click here to paste it, and it will, I'll run it because it should, it'll ask me for my password, which I haven't changed. And so it's going to go and try to make sure I have the current version of Git. And I don't think this one takes very long, so I'm okay running it. I won't run the next one because I think it does take a little while, maybe 2 minutes or 3. All right, so it's reading. All right, so it says didn't upgrade anything. We're all up to date, so that's fine. Git is already the newest version. Okay, then you would go down to the next one. This line actually goes, now that you have Git available on your Raspberry Pi, this would go and get the KIAUH, whatever, however you pronounce that. It will go and get that software. I won't do that one because I think that one does take a little bit of time. And then this one, this line will, once it's done the process of getting and installing the Kia, this one will run it. So let me show you what this does. So what this does is it runs the Klipper installation and update helper. That's what the word stands for. And what it'll do is it will keep your mainsail, Moonraker. These are all Klipper related files. I've added the Klipper screen. Normally that one wouldn't be installed, but I have added that one. And there's other things. There's Octo Everywhere, Mobile Raker. So there are some apps here that will let you remotely log in to your Klipper installation without having to be on the exact same network, and include some security. There's Octoprint by itself. So what this will do is, here's the update version. So I could go to 2, hit enter, and it will go and check to see if I'm up to date. Apparently I'm actually not up to date on some of these. So I have the Klipper version 0.12.085, and the latest version is 0.12.0259. So if I wanted to update, I could tell it to update all. That wouldn't be bad. That's probably a decent thing to do. Let's do A. I don't know how long this could take. We might have to kill some time, but we'll see. A. And so it's going to be, do you want to proceed? Sure. Actually, yes is the thing. So it's going and it's managing keeping all this stuff updated. So it did, the Klipper packages have been installed, so it did those actually pretty fast. Most of these were already the newest versions. Now it's doing another one, it's doing Moonraker. It's going by pretty fast, so I don't think it's going to take terribly long to update these. Otherwise, you have to go and do the updates kind of manually. They're still automated, but you have to recognize that, oh, there's an update, go and install it. This piece of software does a pretty good job of keeping everything updated. It doesn't automatically. You do have to run it and tell it, hey, check for updates today. I don't think it actually will automatically check for them, but it's a good manager. So I have used it before, and it does work pretty well. I haven't had any problems with it. So and it looks like things are going relatively quickly here. So just as a reminder, here is the address, the GitHub address. So actually, to get to here, it would be github.com. You can see it up here, github.com/that that address. So it's, I don't know which one it's working on right now, but it's still working. In the meantime, let's see, do we have any things? Oh, well, I do have something I can show you while it's doing this. All right. So I did put on one of the, carbon fiber magnetic beds. I'm going to take that off for right now because I don't want to mess up any of the fancy beds while we're getting, Z offsets and everything, mesh bed level, all that kind of stuff. While all of that's still in the process of being worked on, now that we're, we had it running, but now we've changed to Klipper. So I'm going to, if I crash the nozzle into the bed, I want it to be this bed versus one of the nicer ones. Plus, this one's pretty durable. I don't have much worry that it's going to scratch this thing. We're still installing over there, so I'm switching that out. Another thing you saw in this software that I'm showing you, I had a thing called Klipper Screen installed. So if you happen to have one of these, so this is a Raspberry Pi 7-inch touchscreen. I happen to have a bunch of these. If you happen to have one of these, then you can connect like this. You can connect your Pi. See if I can get it. The Pi is under this little cover. So I also have the little cases that they go in. You can connect your Pi in there to that screen, and Klipper Screen runs a screen that is, in this case, this is a touch screen. So I can actually go in and check on things. You know, I can monitor the print. I can restart the system, which I don't need to do right now because, remember, right now the Pi is actually in the background over here doing all this stuff. So I don't want to shut it down right now in the middle of that. That could lead to some errors, and I'd have to start over on the installation. So I'm not going to shut it down. Right now you can kind of see that, you know, it can't connect to Moonraker. That's probably something to do with the fact that it's over here in the background updating things. But what this will normally do, once I get everything back updated that we are running over here, once this is done, then this will show me the current status of the printer. It'll let me interact with it. It'll let me, I actually currently have that little Pi cam connected, but I don't have it mounted anywhere yet. So I don't know exactly, you know, I have a very short ribbon cable for it right now. You can get much longer ones, like 6 feet long ribbon cables if you wanted. But it will give me a live view of wherever I mount this little camera. Right now it's just kind of, you know, sitting there. It will let me start prints, interrupt prints, all that kind of stuff. So it's larger than the little screen I had before. You know, there's the little screen. This is much larger. It is a touch screen. So if you happen to have one of those or something that would work as a screen, then Klipper Screen will manage it for you. So all it has to be is a screen that will interface with a Raspberry Pi. And most of those screens interfaced with a cable similar to this one. It's just down in here, down in there. Actually, it's right there. All right, so I'm going to move this out of the way so it's not sitting on the printer. Okay, we're still going over here. You know, there's no idea of how long, no progress bar here or anything, so it's just going. It looks like now we're on WPA supplicant, so that's connecting to the a secure Wi-Fi is what that does. Let's see, what else have we got? I don't see any other changes. We're working towards being able to print in an enclosure, right? There are other ways that we don't have to have the Wi-Fi and we can still kind of interact. You can detach your control panel. It's got a relatively long ribbon cable here, so we could just detach the control panel and put it outside of the enclosure and interact with the printer that way. There are even normally, you know, we put our SD card here. There are even little extensions for remotely accessing that. In fact, I think I have one. Let me show you. So there are these little guys that you can, you know, this end is kind of a fake SD card, so it'll fit in the slot, and then you've got a little receiver here that you can tape to some other place. So there are remote SD card options. So you could get away with, you want the printer in an enclosure, but you don't want to open the enclosure, then you could do that. You could remove your panel, get you an extender if you want to be able to access the SD card, and then you could, for quite a bit cheaper than trying to find a Raspberry Pi and all that kind of stuff, then you could do it without all of that. But I wanted to also show you Klipper and Raspberry Pi and all that kind of thing, so that's why I chose this route to go. Plus, it does let me do other things like if once I get the camera mounted, then I'll be able to remotely monitor it, and it kind of means the printer can be off on its own. That's not a huge big deal, except for I want it to be enclosed, right? Because I want to have a somewhat heated chamber. Plus, some of the materials I want to print, are a little bit not nice to breathe. You know, the printing of those materials. And so the enclosure and remotely locating the printer are nice with that. I saw a question about the class project. I haven't actually decided. If there are any great ideas that somebody wanted. So the last idea from the winter quarter, we can't do, because what we wanted to do, or what they wanted to do, the students, was they wanted to 3D print custom Beyblade and then have a battle. But we can't do that because y'all are all scattered everywhere. But so if there's any ideas, what we've done in the past are, one, I think maybe last summer we did a chess set where everybody just picked a type of piece, like a bishop or a rook or whatever, custom modeled one, maybe did some mesh mixing or maybe from scratch, and we had this kind of mismatch chess set. Another one we've done would also be difficult to do online because it was a test. How strong of a little mini bridge can you make? Last winter, what we actually did was a plane, so a self-powered, not self-powered, a non-powered, so like a glider, 3D printed airplane, and it was a distance contest. We could kind of do that one, just you would have to self-report how far your plane flew. So we could do that one again. But if there's any ideas of what people want to do, then those are some of the ideas. The very first one we did was it was just a mesh mixing type of thing where you put the rock, his head, on something. So I think somebody saw the Rocktopus, which is the little octopus, but they put the rock's head on it. So that was the first one we did. Those are the types of things we've done. So if there are any ideas, then send them ahead, put them in Discord or whatever, and we can come up with what we want to do this quarter. And so you don't have to do the class competition. You can just do any 3D printing related contest that you find. There are plenty online. Instructables usually has some. Prusa usually has some. Maker World usually has some. So there's several of them out there. So you could just do one of those. We've had some people actually win some of them. So you can always do those. We're finished over here, so now you can see I'm all green, so I could go back and we could install new things. Maybe I want fluid on here instead of main cell. Well, not instead of, but in addition to main cell, and I could flip between. Those are two different interfaces I could use. So, you know, this is an easy way to, if you're not like wanting to dig into the Linux style operating system and you don't want to do this kind of stuff behind the scenes, this kind of gives you an easy way to get stuff set up. Let me reboot the system. So there we went down. So I rebooted it on the touchscreen over there. So just to see if I can get it to reconnect to the hotspot. So it's booting up over there. All right. So all of that was, you could do that. Oh, if you don't have this is the one of the little printable enclosures. So if you don't have the enclosure, but you have the screen, you can print enclosures for it. All right. So once Klipper is back running, which it is now, looks like it's back running, I have an IP address, which is the same one we've been using. And you can go to that IP address. So I'm going to type it in 192. It's not 35 though. That was last time, but we have changed it since then. And this is what you'll get. And so you don't have to, I'm on a PC, but you could be on your phone, you could be on a tablet, anything that can connect to the internet and can display web pages will show you something like this. I'm going to get it to where it kind of fits on the screen and not cover up too much of it. There we go. Okay. So this is now how I interface. Now I do have the Klipper screen running also. I'll show it to you. So now that it's back up and running, this is what the Klipper screen looks like. It's kind of a simplified version of what the Klipper PC screen is, but I can, you know, home, there's my temperatures, there's a temperature plot. You can modify what you show on here too, but that's what it would do. But we're going to be on the main screen here. So I had covered up my chat. Let me make sure I can see the chat. So here, what I should have is in this machine, the little wrench, I should have that printer.cfg. Now probably you load this up the first time and this area is filled with a bunch of errors. So you're missing this macro, or this thing's not connected, or whatever. There's probably a bunch of errors over here. That's fine. It just means that the printer configuration file, you know, this thing that we put in there, is missing something. So the first thing it's probably missing is this line. So it's probably missing the mainsail.cfg. So if you're using mainsail and you grabbed, you could be using fluid, so it'd be different, but we decided mainsail because that was the one that was built into the RPi imager. So if we're using mainsail and we just copied the, where's it at? If we just copied and pasted this into Notepad and this is our printer configuration file, then it does not include this little line. So the error that you'll get on your screen actually says be sure to include mainsail.cfg in your printer config file. So what that means is type in this line. So you type in that line and then you save and restart up here, and that's it. You've updated the firmware. Well, you haven't updated the firmware, but you've updated the way that the printer and Klipper talk to each other. So so it's much easier. We don't have to go to VS Code and compile firmware and all that kind of stuff. We just edit this configuration file and save and restart, and it'll restart it doesn't restart the whole Pi, it just restarts the Klipper service or Moonraker, and you can, now that error is gone. This error, or in this case, this one line will clear up a lot of errors, because usually the errors are things like you don't have a pause menu. Let's look what's in there. So you don't have a virtual SD card assigned, so it doesn't have a way to save the files. You don't have a pause resume macro. You don't have display, you know, you don't have all of these things, which you could go and write them individually, but it's, in this case, it's way easier to just add that one include statement into your config file, save and restart, and now they're all taken care of. So that's not everything, but that does clear out all the errors, and you should be able to run your printer. But not print yet, because what you don't have is this configuration file, this one here, doesn't say anything about the CR Touch. So it tells you about all the stuff about your X axis. Also notice rotation distance. This is the Klipper version of, well, not E steps, but in this case X steps, so steps per millimeter. This is kind of not the opposite of that, but this is if you take one rotation of the motor that's controlling that axis, how far did that axis move? So 40 millimeters for one rotation. I think that's how it works. I think that's right. But you have that for X, Y. You have that for Z. You have it for your extruder. So here's your equivalent for E steps. There's our P, I, and D. Now those are the default settings. we need to reconfigure those for this printer. We'll do that in a second. There's your bed, same thing. There's some PID settings for it, but they're not specific to this printer. These are the there's that machine name, machine ID code. Tells it what kind of printer it is, maximum printing velocity and accelerations. I have added this. So I added this BL Touch system here so that it knows to go in and what pin is the BL Touch on, what are the offset values, although I don't, oh wow, those are not the right offset values. Oh, these are, yeah, this is from the configuration. This is not mine. Let's look at mine. So here's mine. So I have only added the BL Touch here. I haven't added the bed mesh. So those are the offsets. Remember when we drew the X? I actually think I had a different Y offset at that point, but it was something similar to this. I've added in the Z offset. Now, in the previous software or firmware, the Z offset was a negative value, but I think the way it works here, it's actually a positive value. So that's why it's a positive 0.75 instead of a negative 0.75. But I need some other commands. I need a bed mesh routine, which I did see one over here. So there was safe Z home. So I need to be able to, anytime I home, I need it to go upwards so it doesn't crash the probe into anything, and then go to the center of the bed. I think I have a safe Z home in here somewhere. Yes, I have it here. I put these coordinates in. I put these are not the center. So here's a little thing. You build in your safe Z home if you are running a CR Touch and you want it to probe the very center of the bed. Well, for whatever reason, the safe Z home macro here, it ignores these offsets. So I basically had to build those offsets into where it thinks the home center is. So this is basically where the nozzle ends up, and that puts the probe over the center of the bed. So that's a little weirdness that you might be hard or frustrating to track down why your probe doesn't probe in the center of the bed. It's because it's putting the nozzle in the center and you want the probe in the center. Let's see. We don't have a run out sensor on here, so we don't need that. Bed screws, this is sort of useful. So what this is bed screws is the X and Y coordinates of where the screws are that support your bed with the springs. That I'm going to put that in there. I actually don't know if these look like the reasonable numbers. I want to put that in here. And why I'm going to do that is because there is a routine. Let me get I wrote it down because I don't remember it all the time. There's a bed level adjust, which we need screws tilt adjust macro. And what that will do is, so the sensor will go and probe the bed, but you want the bed as close to level as possible. So this screws tilt adjust, let me see if I can find that. Let's see. Oh, maybe it's already built in. We just need to run bed screws adjust. So what that'll do is it'll move and it'll actually tell you how many turns to turn the screw to get the 4 corners level. So if you're having trouble with any of the by hand or the paper method or just eyeballing it, then that might help you get your bed, at least the corners of it, level so that you have a better start on your bed mesh. Let's see what else we have in here. That's what we have. Let's see what they have over here. bed mesh. So this is one of the things where we went into VS Code and we had to choose our bed mesh algorithms. So this one is bicubic, so this is not one that just creates the bed at a tilted angle. I think I'll use this one. This one's going to do a 4x4 grid, and it's going to start at coordinate 10, 10 and end up at 200, 194. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think that'll work. This might be the wrong max value though. Now one problem with this is probably going to be, we'll try it out and see, but one problem with this is probably going to be that when it goes to do the fourth, you know, when it's going to probe 1, 2, 3, 4, when it goes to do this fourth one, there's probably some offsets where it's going to be off the bed and it's going to crash, or not crash, but it'll tell us it can't do that. So why don't we try that out? So let's go back over here. So I've added some stuff. I've added this bed screws, I've added this bed mesh, we've got all this other stuff. So that's similar to going into VS Code, changing some things, and then in VS Code I would have to go and compile, put it on the SD card, reboot the computer with the new firmware. You know, it takes a while. So here I've added some stuff. I hit save and restart, and as soon as we get back connected, all of that stuff's done. So now that was it. That was the amount of time it took versus the compiling and the SD card and the firmware flashing and all that. So this might be the biggest reason that I like using Klipper over the just vanilla Marlin type of approach. Just on the, I'm always making little changes, and this makes it a whole lot easier to make changes. Let's try to do the bed mesh. I think the command for that is actually bed mesh. Let's find out. So this little console here will let me type commands. Like for instance, I could do G28. Now, one thing about Klipper is it does not recognize all of your G-code commands. So it does its own thing, and many of the G-code commands have been translated into Klipper language. G28 should be one of those. So I'm going to hit this, and then what G28 does is it's home all. Actually, let's do just home X, so it doesn't take as long. So this should just home the X axis. So I'm going to go over here so we can see what happens, and I'm going to hit send, and so there's my, it raised up, and there's home in the X axis, and it's fine. If I want to go to the center of the bed, I think I can do the G command, G1 command. So G1, so I'll go back over here. G1, the center of this bed should be X equals 112, Y equals 112. Well, let's not use that space though. So it may actually, let me home Y also, because without it having X and Y homed, it doesn't know where to go. It probably will also force me to home Z. So let's do that one. This will also see if our probe's in the center of the bed now. So see, it is close to the center. It doesn't look like it's exactly the center. That just means my offsets are a little bit off. So it did home, so that's good. Now, we could have just done G28 and that would home everything. What was I going to do? I don't even remember what I was going to do. I wanted to home X, Y, and Z. Oh, I wanted to go to the center. So let's G1, 112, X, 112, Y, 112. So I typed in this. And so now it knows where it's at. In fact, it thinks it's at 157, 118, so the nozzle is actually way over there. So this should put the nozzle in the center of our bed. I mean, that's pretty close to the center. I don't know if it's the exact center or not. I might have some offsets that are... Let's see what happens if I go to X0, Y0. Let's see where that is, because that could tell us... so here's the command I typed in. G1, X0, Y0. This will tell us where it thinks the 0, 0 coordinate is. And I want it to be like right on that corner, but it may not be. Let's see. It's pretty close. There's some filament stuck in there. It's pretty close to 0, 0. It's not exactly. I'd say that it's over, like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 millimeters too far that way, and maybe 2 or 3 millimeters too far this way. So there's a little bit of an offset somewhere. When we gave it our bed size, it's off a little bit. Either that or we have a X and Y offset. But you know what? We can go into our machine, printer config, and see if there are any offsets built into here. So it gives us a in-stop position is 0, which maybe it's not. Maybe the Z in-stop triggers, but not at 0. Same thing with Y. I don't see any X and Y offsets anywhere. Oh, that's for the BL Touch. So it's probably this, the fact that at the let's look at the X. When the X hits the end stop, it's counting that as 0, and that's actually, it can't go any further though. So here's the problem. That has to be 0 because there's still bed on this side, but it can't physically go any further that way. It's up against the end stop here. So it just can't go anymore. So we're just going to lose a little bit of our printable area just because it physically can't move over anymore. So the Y is pretty close. I wouldn't worry with that. So, but if I had found some changes there to make, I could make those and then save and restart. Since I didn't make any changes, I can just X out of this and it'll go back to my dashboard or wherever I want to go. I want to do the bed mesh now. Let's see if I just do bed mesh. No, that's not the command for it. Let's see. Let's look in our printer config and see what we called that. Called it bed mesh, but that must not be the. Let's look at the Klipper documentation for bed mesh. So there's the definition of what all the parts are doing. Oh, this is doing a 4x3. Okay, so maybe that mesh max is correct, but I think it said 4x4 on mine. There's for a round bed. There's different types of interpolation. You know, are we just tilting the mesh, or are we actually mapping all the points in the mesh, and what are we doing with that? Let's see. Mesh fade. So eventually, you don't want to be compensating for the bed. You want to eventually just be printing in one plane. So how many layers, or is it Z height? It's Z height. So how many millimeters do you want to compensate before it fades out and it's not compensating anymore? So a few millimeters is usually fine. You need to print the entire print with the mesh compensation on. Let's see. I wanted to see a way to trigger this. Oh, bed mesh calibrate. Okay, so let's try that. I'm just looking to see if there's one I can copy. Doesn't look like it. Alright, so let's see if we can get this to do the bed mesh calibrate. I don't know if I want to put all of these things in here or not, but default profile name is default, automatic. Let's just do bed mesh calibrate, see if that's enough or if we need more parameters on it. Well, let's get the right word in there. Okay, so we're over here doing something. Oh, on the, just so you can see, I just typed in bed mesh calibrate is all I did. I didn't do all of the parameters. So you can change the file name. All right, so here's a thing where it went out of range. So you can change the file name. You can change the parameters. Here, what happened is it did this probe. It did 3. So it did 1, 2, 3. So it did that one, and it wants to go to the 4th one, but if we look over here, move out of range, it says that it wants to go to 245.490, which is off of my bed, right? So I have to go in here to my printer config, and I think what I need to do is change my stepper position max. It wanted to go to 240 whatever. I'll give it a maximum of 250 then. And it's because there's the offset between where the probe is and where the nozzle is. I think there's enough room, physical room on the printer. So enough physical room here for me to tell it to go out here, but it can't actually print out there. So let's go back over here, save and restart. And it takes a second, and now it has this new limit on how far it thinks it can go. So we can, remember, this is another one of the pieces of software where you can go up and down. Arrows will review your history of commands that you've used. So if you don't want to type bed mesh calibrate again, just hit up and try it again. I assume it's going to home first. Oh, all right, so it actually said must home axis first. So we'll just do G28, and that'll home all the axes. I also wasn't paying attention if my binder clips over here, if they were in the way or not. They were before, so I might have to, check out those binder clips. All right, so we homed all. I'm going to rerun the bed mesh calibrate, and we'll watch this part some this time. All right, so that looks like it's clear. That one's clear. That one's clear, and this is where it. All right, so it's there. Now we may end up with a similar thing in the y-axis. I don't know. So this is a 4x4 grid, by the way. So we were doing a 3x3. So over here, what we're collecting are all the data points. So at this x and y coordinate, this is what it was measuring for the z height. So it can take all of these z heights and calibrate a mesh based on those. It looks like it didn't go all the way to the back there, which is okay. But we could change our our x and y everything, and we could get it tuned to where it goes closer to the back of the bed. I'm not too worried about it though. Back over here, bed mesh state has been saved. So sometimes your bed is so bad off that it'll give you an error that, hey, this thing is, something's wrong. There's a hole in the bed, or it probed off the edge of the bed, or your bed is just really bad, and it'll give you an error that it's outside of the range. Ours worked fine. The save config will update the printer config file and restart the printer. Let's do that. I don't know if these have to be all caps or not. So we're going to run save config. It restarts every time you make a change like that. Let's see. All right, so I don't think I have, oh, there's the height map. All right, so this height map over here, if we load the default, so remember I didn't give it a special name, so I gave it default. So if we load our default, this is what it thinks my bed looks like. So, not too great. Now, look at our scale here. Our scale is from, the dark blue is minus 0.1 inches, and the dark red is plus not inches, millimeters, 0.1 millimeters. So I've got a total deviation of like 0.2 millimeters, which is a whole layer height. But you know, we can draw the mesh over here. So this is the mesh that it created to try and compensate for my wonky bed. There's what a flat bed would look like. So it gives you an exaggerated, you know, I think I can go in here and, you know, modify the scale of the z-axis to see, you know, okay, that's not quite so bad, but I don't know how it chooses where to start the scale at. But let's see. There's our bicubic. I think I did cubic, or I don't remember what process I did. I think I just took the default one. But there's what it thinks the bed has to do in order to map correctly to it. So actually here are some data. Our range is 0.258 millimeters. So that's kind of a, you know, more than a layer, unless we're doing thicker layers, but still now I can compensate for that. All right. So in order to compensate though, so in Cura, when we were doing this before and we just put the CR Touch on and we were still running Marlin, let's get Cura out because I haven't changed it. Here's Cura. We did this. So let's go over to our printer, manage printers. I called it this summer 2024. We added this line, G29 bed mesh. So Klipper doesn't know G29. So in fact, what Klipper would rather you do is get rid of all of this stuff. Don't have any of this here. So I don't want to delete it because who knows, we might go back to it someday. So I'm just going to comment it out. Okay. Now I'm not sure what it does with lines with 2 semicolons in there, but I think it ignores all of it. And what it would rather you have is this. So let's see. It would rather you have, oh, that's just where I searched for it. This one. This as your start G code. So I'm going to paste this guy in here. And let's look through what it's telling me. So these first 2 lines are comments, the 190 and 108, or 109. Those are comments, and not Klipper, Cura keeps switching back and forth. So sometimes Cura, if it doesn't see these material bed temperature and the print temperature numbers in there, it will put them in there itself, and other times it won't. So I don't know the current iteration. What this does is it shows Cura that, hey, we've already got a 190, 109, don't worry about it. We're going to let Klipper actually handle it, but Cura doesn't know anything about Klipper. So these first 2 lines are just telling Cura not to worry about the temperatures, that we've got it under control. And then this other one is literally all that it runs, start print. So it's going to go into the printer configuration, look for a macro named start print, and just do whatever it says. And it's going to say most of all this stuff. Now it does say, oh, go ahead and get the bed temperature up to whatever, and your material temperature up to whatever your slicer says. All right. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put these 2 or 3 lines into Cura, and you can either erase everything else or do like I did and comment out everything else. I'm going to comment it out because who knows, I might want to add it back or want to reference it at some point. But really, it just won't start print in there. So also this is, let me show you the website. There we go. So here's the website address for this particular Klipper start and end G code. Same thing with end G codes. It just wants to see end print and let Klipper take care of all that. Here are the start print commands. So I'm going to copy this, go over here to our printer configuration. I'll put it, it doesn't matter where, so the order of these little macros in here doesn't matter. It just needs them somewhere that it can reference them. So I'm going to put it up at the top, but it doesn't actually matter. So here's a G-code macro, and it's named start print. We just told Cura to go look for the macro named start print and run it. So here's default temperature. I normally print at 50. We'll do 55 since I have the magnet on there now, so it does take a little bit more. And my extruder temperature is normally defaulting to 205. So those are my defaults. You can use, it should override them with whatever Cura says to print with. It's going to start printing. Going to do some relative or absolute coordinates. Here's my G code offset for Z. I'm going to put in my 0.75 in there. Home the printer. Once I home the printer, that's when I want to run my bed mesh. So I believe, I'm trying to think if I need to put that in parentheses, the brackets, or just do bed mesh. Well, doesn't look like that's what I want. What's it even called? Bed underscore mesh. So it gave some really weird. So do I put it in brackets? Doesn't look any better. Let's do a quick search. And see. I don't remember all of the commands. So let's see how. Do I need all caps? Maybe I need all caps. Oh, it does look better as all caps. All right. So before it was different colors, which made it look like it didn't know what it was. So maybe it's all caps. So now I think it should go find the bed mesh macro, which is further down here, and run this thing. And well, these are the parameters for it. The bed mesh macro is actually outside in other macros outside of the printer configuration. There, by the way, so this wasn't here before. I did not add this. So when we did our bed mesh calibrate, here are all the little points it added. So we could, if we didn't want it to generate a mesh for that print, in fact, that's what this was saying, is you could do profile load, and ours was named default. So we could just load up the default print, profile, not print, but the default mesh, not have to go probe everything. I do want to run the probe though, at least to make sure it's executing the thing first. And then once I'm sure it's executing it, then maybe we'll just use a default profile. Although it doesn't take that long for this size bed to do the 4 points. But if you had a really large bed or a really dense mesh and it takes a significant amount of time, you could just do it once and then load that profile without having to reprobe before the print. All right, so we've got our bed mesh in there. We've got our start G code. Let's look at our end G code. So end macro, let's get this guy. And let's add that. We'll put it right after the start macro just to have it there. It looks like it's going to turn off the bed and fan and everything. That's what all this is. Going to move the nozzle out of the way. Going to lift the nozzle a little bit. Turn off the steppers so that you can move things around by hand. That's more or less what I want it to do. That sounds good. Okay, so now we have a start and end. Let's save and restart. So it'll, once we're restarted here, we should be good. Okay, let's go back to Cura. So Cura, we need to add the end G-code. So we're at Manage Printers and Machine Settings. Same thing as before, where we're going to comment out all of the existing stuff, and we're going to put in end print basically. Can't see, it's covering up. There we go. Let's see what they have for the end G-code. There's a start. Did I miss the end one? Oh, that's Super Slicer. Cura start. Oh, it doesn't actually give you an end print. Or maybe they're all start. End G-code for all. It's just end print. So that's easy enough. We're going to replace all of our existing things with just end print. And we'll save that by closing the window. Let's find a smaller file to print because that would take a while. Part for calibration, let's just do a calibration cube. We've got our 0.6 millimeter nozzle, so let's do 0.4 height. Let's do one wall. Let's do 2 bottom layers, 3 top, just to make it not sag. Infill can be 15. Print, I've got PLA loaded right now, so 205. Let's do our 55 since I've added the magnet, so there's a little bit more thickness there. This is PLA, so we'll have cooling. We don't need support. Let's make sure that our spiralize is not on. It is not. Let's slice that. Preview just to make sure we've got what we think we've got. That looks good. All right, so now, so in a minute, maybe not today because we're out. We got 3 minutes left, but we will be able to send this straight to Klipper. But for now, I'm going to save it to disk, which I'll save it on my desktop as Klipper Cube or something. And then we'll go over to our Klipper, and then there's a big blue upload and print. So upload, go to the desktop, there's my Klipper Cube, open, and you know, it immediately starts the printing process. So that's the remote part of what I want to accomplish. Now we need to add a couple of things. We need to integrate it into our slicer better so that it we don't even have to do the upload and print. It can just print from the slicer. We may switch over to a different slicer just to show you some other ones. We need to get our camera connected to this thing, and we need to get it. All right, so it didn't like my bed mesh, so that wasn't the right command. I'll have to sort out what command do we need to tell it to do the bed mesh. It is currently, I think, heating the bed right now, so it skipped the bed mesh. Maybe we'll just load up the default one, but it should be flat enough that it's going to print anyway. But that's why I didn't want to go straight to loading it, because I wanted to make sure that how to put that command in there. But right now it's heating up the bed. So what else? Oh, get it in the enclosure. So our enclosure, once we get everything here set up, I'll probably move the printer to a remote place, because we really won't need to do many things with it directly. We'll bring it out every now and then to maybe change a part here or there or upgrade something, but our real goal is to get it off on its own, where we can send it files, print that carbon fiber polycarbonate, keep ourselves safe so we don't have to sit next to a thing that's emitting all kinds of fumes or whatever. There is a minimal amount of research that is as far as I can tell, inconclusive for the most part on if printing generates enough nanoparticles to actually be harmful. The only cases I've seen where it even looks like it's remotely like that, what they did is they printed like a server, not a server, a print farm. So mini printers in a small enclosed space with no ventilation, they could track particles in that kind of environment. So that's definitely not what we have, definitely not what most people have. But it'd be nicer just not to smell some of these printer filaments like ASA, ABS. For whatever reason, yellow PLA to me always smells really bad. I think maybe the yellow coloring is just something I don't like. So I don't know if you've noticed any particular colors smell worse than others, but for me, yellow is pretty bad, and that means green is sometimes bad because it has some yellow in it. But usually it's just yellow is much stronger than the others. But there are some filaments like ABS and ASA that they are more toxic, not toxic, noxious. So we're going to continue on with that, and we'll be back Monday 9:30, and we'll probably do a little bit of Klipper, but we'll be working more on not just directly with Klipper and slicers. We're going to work back on getting our polycarbonate printed. All right, I will see you on Monday.